Alright, so today I want to make a video updating everyone as usual on the new cases as well as get into some other important things that have came out. So let's get right into it here. Basically, we have bad news and we have good news. The good news is the worldwide cases have pretty much, the curve has flattened, although the problem with that is you don't know, number one, China's lying, so you don't know about that. And there's probably other countries that are lying too about their case totals. There's a lot of countries that are hardly even testing. Yeah, that's the problem with that. But again, we these countries have been. I mean, if they're lying, they're usually consistently lying at a certain rate. Let's say they're only reporting half their cases. So I mean, even if they're lying, I assume you could say, well, they're still probably lying at a similar rate. So it's a good sign that the case totals worldwide have gone down. Bad news is Alberta had its worst day, and I think Canada may as well. I'm not sure, but we're up to 1,250 dead. So I think that's the most dead in a day. But again, there's some other stuff that, like I said, the other thing to point out is that the amount of tests we're doing has gone up a lot. I think we did like we were still in the 80,000s for the tests yesterday. So that means that we had 239 new cases, but of the people tested, maybe 5-10% of them were actually positive. So we're testing a lot of people. So I would like to see the adjusted rate, but at the very least, it is still relatively bad. I mean, that's something you can't deny, and you definitely can't deny it. But on the other hand, the models projected the curve to peak in, mid to late April, early May at the latest. So that's kind of and I'm talking about the models that were more on the low end. The models that were more on the high end, even the more mid end ones have over predicted the case totals and the deaths so far. So it's safe to assume that when you look at these projections, it's safe to assume the lower end. So, and again, the lower end, it's not as much of a peak. And again, the cases have to go down at some point. And the problem with this too is that we can't continue to maintain the way we're currently going. It's just not possible for several reasons. Again, number one, we can't keep running absolutely printing massive amounts of money to keep the economy somewhat afloat. It's not going to work. And the longer you keep the economy shut off, the more businesses are going to have to close down because the government's not covering 100% of business costs. I think they're covering like 75. And again, the problem, like I said, the government can't keep propping everyone up so much. It doesn't work that way. It'd be nice if it did, but it doesn't work that way. They can they don't even have the money to maintain the way we're currently going, let alone another 3-4 months or whatever, a year. There's no way they're going to be able to do a year. I think that at some point in May, I think it's going to be the tipping point to where people finally wake up. You already see a little bit of unrest in certain areas, and again, I don't think people are going to put up with it for too much longer, especially now that it's really starting to warm up. People are going to want to get outside. They're going to realize, and the thing too is that the virus is going to slow as it warms up too, because it can't live on surfaces for nearly as long when it's warmer. So that's the thing. The other thing to point out too is that one of my neighbors is a peace officer, and we were talking yesterday, and he said that 4 people attempted suicide yesterday in the city I live in, which isn't that big of a city, like I say, suburb of Edmonton. So, and again, he said that, yeah, it's been a very big problem. I mean, specifically said it's a very big problem lately, and it's what I said too. Unemployed people are more than twice as likely to commit suicide and to have depression, to have all this kind of stuff. Not only that, just to develop bad habits too. Like, I can't imagine the strain on the healthcare system and, the amount of depression and stuff that's going to go on because of this. Because one of the most biggest predictors of depression and all this kind of stuff is people being unemployed. And the government's not helping out enough. I mean, and they can't help out enough, to be fair. They can't help out enough to, if they're going to keep the economy closed, to keep things afloat. I mean, for some people it's enough, but for a lot of people it isn't. And like I said, we can only maintain this for so long, and the government needs to come up with a plan for, hey, some point in May, whether it's early May, mid May, late May, first week of June at the latest, is what I've been saying for a while. We need to get the economy back open, because when we do open it back up, it's not going to open back up as much as we think. And that's something that I think the government it depends. They know, they have to know. The economy is not going to turn back on it. Like I said, I'm going to say it a million times over because I want people to know that when it happens, you heard it here first. The economy is not going to turn back on the way it was going before. It's just not going to happen. Like I say, a lot of people are going to think they have jobs to go back to and they don't. A lot of people are going to have jobs to go back to, and the economy is going to be really slow when they go back, and they're going to get laid off. So we're going to be in for some massive amounts of trouble. And like I say, the government has some time to plan things out. Be like, here, this is our plan. Let's come up with a plan for every anticipated situation that could come up and how we're going to deal with it. The problem is, I don't think they're doing that. Like they've botched pretty much everything up to this point. Again, the best predictor of the future is the past. It's safe to assume they're going to botch it going forward. So anyway, let's get into some other important things here. This is from Maxime Bernier. Again, this is something I've been talking about, but high unemployment for the foreseeable future is another reason to substantially lower immigration levels, in addition to all other legitimate ones we had before. Whether our globalist elites like it or not, they'll have to face this question. Again, this is a realistic thing. Like, why are we not cutting immigration? It doesn't make any sense. We don't need the immigration. And the problem with the left, they've always had that I mean, they're wrong about it. They're clearly wrong about it. I mean, the states under Trump is a clear example of that. Whether you like them or not, it's a clear example of that. We don't need immigration to replace the job losses. The only way you technically need immigration is if there's a surplus in jobs available. In other words, there needs to be more jobs available than there is people unemployed, and Canada is not even close to that. Like, even before this, let alone after. Um, there's millions of people unemployed right now. Why do we need immigration? And we know, again, government, university funded studies have shown, immigrants from the third world overwhelmingly take more out of the system than they put in. So it's just more of a strain on the system. And again, people just love to ignore, basic facts, all this kind of stuff, and just to satisfy their own, belief in their own moral superiority. Pretty much that's kind of the reasons that these people have their beliefs when it comes to this kind of stuff. But like I say, I'm going to make another video on this probably because it's a big topic. This is from Andrew Lawton. He goes on to say, gosh, this is embarrassing. CBC telling Canadians the best way to call out their family members for sharing misinformation. Now, again, CBC state funded, so pretty much what CBC is saying is pretty much what the government believes. Let's just be honest, CBC receives over $1 billion a year from the government. So if over $1 billion a year isn't enough of a bribe or an incentive, then please tell me what is. Please tell me what is. But anyway, this is straight out of Nazi Germany, straight out of a communist country. The Nazis did this kind of stuff. They had the call out your neighbor and we'll reward you situations going on. And again, all these lefties they claim they're so we have fascism coming here, and we're anti-fascist and we're anti-authoritarian, anti this, anti that. And yet we have something that's literally out of a authoritarian, fascist, communist, what all these kind of authoritarian ideologies use this kind of stuff, and yet where's all the lefties that are outraged about this? Please. Again, this should be a nonpartisan thing too. That's something, another thing about the left too is that they seem to have this idea that if they agree with you on anything, that means they agree with you on everything. It's like the whole thing I always bring up with gay marriage. It's like, um, you can disagree with, drag queen story hour, or, you know, a 5-year-old has the intellectual capacity to understand changing their gender, what that entails, and still believe in gay marriage. The problem with the left is that most of them seem to think that if you disagree with drag queen story hour being a good thing, or you don't think that a 5-year-old has the ability, the intellectual capacity to understand what changing their gender is going to entail, then that must mean you're against everything. And that's why they have this, this complex that they can't agree with you on anything, on literally anything, even stuff that, they'd rather side with a communist dictatorship, that has millions of people in internment camps, no free speech, very poor human rights records. They'd rather side with them over someone that disagrees with them on one issue. again, that's the left for you these days. Um, this is from Breaking 911. Now, apparently, YouTube is censoring people that talk about this kind of stuff, but anyway. YouTube, U.S. intel officials believe COVID-19 likely originated in a Wuhan laboratory, but not as a bioweapon. Other theories are also being investigated. Now, again, this is what I've been saying for a while now. This was either intentionally inflicted upon the world, which means it's a bioweapon, or it was through horrible, lax, terrible security policies that it was brought out into the world. Either way, China is responsible. Again, the whole bat theory, again, completely debunked, makes absolutely no sense. First of all, they didn't sell bats at the local area that they claim that it came from. The other problem with that too is that the Chinese government destroyed the market they claim it came from. So, if you commit a crime and you destroy the evidence, anybody with half a brain knows that destroying evidence when you're accused of a crime, almost always, I would say 99.9% of the time, um, is just a confession that you committed the crime. So the whole it originated in the fish market is an absolute, that's the conspiracy theory, not this. Like, come on. People still pretending that it originated there are absolutely insane. Um, Anyway, this is from Maxime Bernier. Now, this is a big story that came out, I think it was yesterday. So Justin Trudeau is spending $8.6 million to renovate his cottage. Now, again, where is the outrage with this kind of stuff? No, this is so boring too to have to talk about this kind of stuff over and over. It's just blatant corruption, blatant, double standards, all this kind of stuff. And again, how does it take $8.6 million to renovate a home? Like, seriously, like, how do you spend that much to renovate a house? Like, it's not like it's a 20,000 square foot house. Like, I mean, it's big. It's a lot bigger than the average person's house, but it's not that big. So, like, could you not renovate it for a $500,000? Like, is that not enough? Like, I've seen plenty of when you read comments from these kind of stuff, you'll see contractors and home builders, talking about there's no way that there's people saying, yeah, I could do it for a 500,000, I could do it for less than $1 million, you know. So what are they spending all this money on? Like, seriously, like Justin Trudeau makes $350,000 a year. He's a trust fund kid, but yet he's using taxpayer money to do this kind of stuff. And again, as usual, no lefty outrage. So again, just going to show that they don't care about wasted money, all this kind of stuff. They don't care about the greedy capitalist, all this kind of stuff. Like, imagine if Donald Trump did this kind of stuff. Imagine if Donald Trump did this kind of stuff. The outrage. It would be front page news. It would be even a bigger story than this whole virus thing. It would be much bigger story. But yet Justin Trudeau does it. Nobody cares. So again, it's not surprising, but I just wanted to point that out. Last thing here, this is something I talked about already, but I want to bring it up again because it's kind of important. And now, anyway, the for state-run television in China, they basically came out and put this ad where they shove a black guy in a, I think it was a washer or a dryer, and the woman's like all disgusted with him, glaring at him or whatever, and an Asian guy comes out and all of a sudden she lights up and she smiles and all this kind of stuff. So a blatantly racist um, commercial. And Tom Quiglin goes on to say, while progressives tell us that only white people can be racist, China remains openly racist against blacks on a remarkable level. Watch this video on how Chinese women can wash a black man and get a good Chinese man instead. And again, too, this is something I wanted to bring up for any time for anybody who debates the left, whether it's online or in person. This is something, whenever they accuse you of being racist, bring this up, and unless they completely be like completely rethink their worldview and their argument, don't take them seriously. Again, until the left takes this kind of stuff seriously, and like I say, until they start criticizing Islam rather than accusing, Canadian and American societies of being sexist and patriarchal and racist and all this kind of stuff, until they start criticizing China for stuff like this, you don't need to take them seriously. You don't need to take them seriously whatsoever, like whatsoever. So again, I wanted to bring that up because it's just blatantly obvious stuff that you'd think that people would call out, but again, this just goes to show that the left doesn't care about racism. They only care about racism when they can use it to benefit themselves. They only care about racism when they can attack white people, because when they can, the reason that they want to attack white people because whites are the only race that doesn't vote for the left overwhelmingly. Every other race is, especially white men, which is, usually why they single out white men, because white men, if just white men voted in the states, every state would be Republican, and a lot of them by a large margin. If only non-whites voted, guess what? Exact opposite. So again, that's why the left cares so much about this kind of stuff. It's like I bring up with immigration too. There's no reason whatsoever to support mass immigration right now, other than you want the votes. Again, that's the thing about immigration. If we want to have these conversations, we need one side to start being honest about their intentions. Like, please just be honest about your intentions. We can have a conversation. But again, we can't, because that's all they do is just lie and manipulate. So anyway, I'm gonna leave the video there. If you liked it, make sure to like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal and email. I got linked in the description. Again, appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe. And always check out my BitChute channel. Again, YouTube's gonna shadow ban me at some point, so check out my BitChute channel.